Senator Elizabeth Warren has asked the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission to answer several questions by today related to their oversight over crypto exchanges and what Congress needs to do, if anything, to fill in any regulatory gaps. Joining us now to discuss is SEC Commissioner Hester Peirce. Welcome to the show, Commissioner. So Senator Warren asked SEC Chair Gary Gensler to outline the scope of the SEC's authority over crypto exchanges by today. Can you, by any chance, offer a preview?
Well, I can't. Good morning. It's great to be here. The chair responds to those letters on his own, so I don't know what he's going to say, although he has been fairly public about saying that someone needs to, at the federal level, needs to have a bigger role over spot crypto exchanges.
Mm-hmm. In your personal opinion, how do you feel it should be regulated among the SEC, Congress, how those lines should be divided?
Well, I certainly think it's good that Congress is focusing on crypto and thinking about what the proper regulatory regime is. I think it's important for that to be a decision that's made by people who are accountable to the American people. I would urge people who are thinking about the proper regulatory framework not to assume that everything needs to be highly regulated in the financial system. If a system of self-regulation is working, then I don't see that we need to create a whole new framework. But we do need to think about what the interactions are with our existing regulatory framework. And that's something that I've been urging us to do now for 3 years. I'm hoping that under Chair Gensler we'll be able to do that.
Well, there are some policymakers who have a view that there should be more regulatory action or clarity in the matter. Senator Warren, Sherrod Brown had some comments from committee hearings yesterday. We have a recap. Let's have a listen.
Instead of leaving our system, our financial system, at the whims of giant banks, crypto puts the system at the whims of some shadowy, faceless group of super coders and miners, which doesn't sound better to me.
There's nothing democratic or transparent about a shady, diffuse network of online funny money. The best thing we can do to protect Americans' money is to adopt smart regulations that protect consumers, that protect investors, that separate the innovators from the extortionists.
Many people have raised legitimate issues about cryptocurrencies, but we shouldn't lose sight of the tremendous potential benefits that distributed ledger technology offers.
Commissioner Peirce, would love to kind of get your reaction. Shady coders, but also some other balancing critique as well.
Look, well, I think it's important that Congress is trying to get their arms around what crypto is and what its benefits are and what the potential risks are. That's a natural function for the Banking Committee to be playing. What I do urge caution on is there's a real importance in having the ability of people to code and express themselves through software. We want to make sure that we don't end up preventing people from doing that without having to fit into some regulatory oversight regime that would prevent them from engaging in what is essentially free speech from my perspective. So I think that's an area where all of us are going to be challenged as regulators in thinking about how to regulate while making sure that we preserve the important fundamental American values of innovation and privacy and the ability of people to express themselves, even doing so through code. So that's something that I'm concentrating on as I look at it from my regulatory perspective.
Commissioner Peirce, it's so nice to have you back on the show. So, I mean, one of the things we did see from the hearings yesterday is there definitely is a little bit of, I don't know if I would say panic, but I think maybe concern over cryptocurrency. And I think part of the reason for that is concern recently over stablecoins, in particular Tether or USDT. So I would just love to get your personal opinion. How much should we be worried about Tether or about stablecoins in general? Because we're definitely seeing a lot of people talking about them not being properly backed or not being transparent enough, and how this could lead to, you know, a financial crisis in the cryptocurrency world and potentially even in the larger financial world. Is that a legitimate concern?
Well, I can't speak about any particular stablecoin. I think there has been a trend in recent weeks and months to provide some more clarity and transparency, and that is kind of one of the fundamental baselines of crypto, I think, which is transparency and openness, so that people know what they're getting and they understand the terms on which they're getting it. So that's a natural change. Certainly I understand why people are asking questions. Stablecoins have grown quite a bit in a relatively short amount of time. Now, I think it's interesting that at the same time that the Senate was having a hearing, the House was having a hearing on CBDCs. And I've made the point in the past that I think private stablecoins might be a better fit for some of the things we're trying to achieve, or that other countries are trying to achieve with the CBDC. I think a stablecoin could provide that role in the United States. So let's be careful, again, not to allow panic to prevent us from seeing some of the benefits that these stable coins are playing now and can potentially play. And of course, we have to ask questions and understand how they work. That's a natural and understandable thing for market participants to be doing, and certainly for regulators and members of Congress to be doing as well.
Commissioner Peirce, welcome back. Do you think stable coins, though, that are backed by securities rather than dollar and dollar-like assets, do you think that they themselves are securities? You personally, not the SEC, but what do you think? Do you think they basically are?
I certainly speak only for myself, but I would say that if people are designing a stable coin, they need to be asking that question that you're raising, which is an important one. Is this a security? Because if it is, then there are a whole raft of rules that already apply. And so what it is, what the underlier is important, and that's something that people need to be looking at as they're designing these things.
Along the same lines, if a stable coin is issued against non-dollar denominated assets directly, so in other words, they're not taking in dollars to issue those stable coins, but foreign assets, foreign currency, or say commercial paper, does the SEC view that as a form of essentially printing money? And what's to stop a stablecoin issuer from doing that to the tune of trillions of dollars, effectively making its own currency pegged to the US dollar, but separate?
Well, I think some of the concerns that you're raising in that question are probably better addressed to the Fed or Treasury as they think about stablecoins, and there certainly is a lot of consideration of stablecoins from different angles in the government. From our perspective as a securities regulator, what we're thinking about is, are these things, as they're designed, securities? And if so, how are we thinking about regulating them? How are they already regulated under our existing regime? I think from my perspective also, I want to make sure that we think about these things as the role that they can play in fostering the development of our financial system for the benefit of everyone.
Commissioner Peirce, you mentioned central bank digital currencies. In your ideal scenario, would we have central bank digital currencies like a digital dollar and stablecoins coexisting, or are you suggesting that stablecoins could actually play that role better?
Well, I think we need to be talking about that as a society and asking whether in the U.S. would a private stablecoin system be preferable, particularly because we have such concern about privacy in the United States. And the notion of having a CBDC, I know that some people, including former chairman of the CFTC, John Carlo, think that they can be designed in a way that respects privacy. But that, for me, is a very important value that we have to make sure is front and center. And private stablecoins are already functioning and can function in a way to preserve people's privacy in their financial transactions. So something to consider. Again, it's a little outside my purview as a securities regulator, but I just think that sometimes when we approach these conversations about financial technology, we do so from the perspective of wanting to have much more regulatory oversight, much more government oversight of financial transactions. And I like to push back and say, remember that the baseline should be allowing people to enter into transactions they want to enter into as private citizens with one another, as long as they have full information about what they're getting into, and allow them to engage in transactions without having a government monitoring role, unless it's necessary for achieving a particular government purpose.
So in your gut, what would you prefer? What would the world look like? Would it be a world of stablecoins, or would it be a world of CBDCs, or a mix? What do you personally, what's your personal preference?
Again, I mean, my personal preference is just that we as a society have a really broad-ranging discussion about this and don't just jump to the conclusion that we need to be surveilling every financial transaction. That's been a concern of mine at the SEC. There's a strange willingness to cede personal privacy when it comes to financial transactions. And I think that's something that we need to really talk about as a society before we go down that road. And to the extent that CBDCs would play a role in that, it's a piece of the conversation we need to have.